What's up, everybody? You cannot talk about the 60s without talking about the Weather Underground organization. They started out calling themselves the Weatherman Group, but they decided that that was a bit too misogynistic, even though they did not reform their practice to be less misogynistic. But in 2018, I wrote this article. It's called "Don't Wake the Weatherman: Microwave Focoismo is child's play." So in this article, which was written after I finished Mark Rudd's account of his organizing with SDS, and later with Weather Underground, um, I critique the understanding of revolution that not just Weather Underground, but a lot of other groups had during this time. It was rooted in a Foucaultist understanding of how revolution works. They really dug Che Guevara and Carlos Marighella a lot because, like, this was the era of Che Guevara and Carlos Marighella, and there really wasn't that much study of Mao's theory of protracted people's war. They read Lin Biao a lot because Lin Biao hadn't been thoroughly repudiated as a rightist, anyways. So I argued in this article that I wrote that at the root of Weathermanism was essentially a petty bourgeois subjectivist view of violence. Rudd points out in detail that the definition of a revolutionary cadre, according to the Weather Group, was its ability to carry out acts that demonstrated one's hardness and militancy. He discusses the lead up to the 1969 Days of Rage demonstrations in Chicago. So Rudd says, that summer we actually set up tests of our ability to fight in the guise of organizing the potentially revolutionary youth. In Detroit, members of the Weatherman Summer Project, mostly students from Ann Arbor, ran down a beach brandishing a Viet Cong flag with predictable results. A gang of teenagers, many of which had probably just come back or were getting ready to go to Vietnam, fought them. In Brooklyn, our people invaded a high school and tied up two teachers while haranguing the terrified ninth graders about the need to come to Chicago on October 8th and join the people of the world in their fight against U.S. imperialism. In Cleveland, we started fights in a shopping mall in which several of our youngest members were arrested and eventually did time in state prisons. To participate in these actions was to prove yourself a hardened revolutionary cadre. So I go on to argue that this can be seen in hindsight as petty bourgeois white youth. Many Weather cadre were alumni of some of the country's finest bourgeois indoctrination institutions. Rudd himself was expelled from Columbia after participating in the notorious strike, which was correctly guided and was in solidarity with the black residents of Harlem and black students at the university. And these kids were basically trying to have the petty bourgeois beaten out of them. So I see similar tendencies playing out today. Keep in mind this was written 5 years ago. Playing out today, white kids trying to prove their status as hardened revolutionaries by posturing with weapons and violent rhetoric on the internet. Not surprisingly, this doesn't endear them to the white and brown people that they so desperately want attention and recognition from, their own people, or communists in other countries. Ironically, they've taken to denouncing the Filipino mass movement and Jose Maria Sison, rushed in power, as rightists because they engage in peace talks, along with the fact that most of the Maoist movement in this country is in such a state of disarray and embarrassment that it is more fruitful and productive for a lot of younger comrades to link up with the PSL and Workers' World Party and other revisionist rapey formations than various collectives beholden to a now collapsed sect in Texas that are, in practice, performance art troops that occasionally holler about gentrification because that's what black people care about. To underscore this point, let's hear from Fred Hampton. This was shortly after the Days of Rage, and this was also shortly before his murder at the hands of the Chicago Police Department.
Fred, where does the Black Panther Party stand concerning the Weathermen, the SDS?
We stand way back from the SDS and the Weatherman because we believe that the Weatherman action, there's two actions, it's RIM 2 and Weatherman. We think they call them both national action. We think that RIM 2 is national action, Weatherman is national reaction, you know. We think it is anarchistic, opportunistic, individualistic, it's chauvinistic.
So RIM 2 was organized basically like on a working class foundation, like it was about organizing the working class. RIM 1, aka the Weather Underground, thought that it was fruitless to try to organize the working class because their opinion was that the working class in the United States was hopelessly counter-revolutionary. They leaned a lot on youth.
It's customistic, and that's the bad part about it. It's customistic in that its leaders take people into situations where the people can be massacred, and they call that revolution. And it's nothing but child's play. It's folly, and it's criminal because people can be hurt. We say that they're doing exactly what the pigs want them to do. When they take people down and just do nothing, play around, and the pigs are prepared for this, and they'll wipe all of those young people out. We think these people may be sincere, but they're misguided, they're muddleheads, and they're scatterbrains. The only way we can show them is to criticize them like we're doing right now, and then leave from here and go to the federal building and have a demonstration that's to educate, a demonstration that is disciplined and organized, and that's what we're going to have to do, and let them see the examples.
Tell me why you feel the approach of the SDS Weatherman is wrong.
I feel it is wrong, just as I said before.
No, don't tell me just you said before. That's why I asked you again. Just answer straight, just in case we use this part.
I feel that it's wrong.
Let me ask you again. Why do you feel that the approach of the SDS Weatherman is the wrong approach?
I feel that it's wrong because it's pig action. You see, they're doing.
Ironic, Hampton is wise, but imagine if you applied this to Hamas. There's a difference between Hamas and the Weather Underground. Hamas actually has a mass base. The Weather Underground did not have a mass base. Every time they tried to go out and recruit the white youth that they saw as the vanguard of the Mother Country Revolution, they ended up getting beat up. Whereas the prisoners who are being released by the Zionist entity are shouting glory to the resistance, a major part of which is the group that you just mentioned. The two are not comparable.
Exactly what the pigs want them to do. They're leading people into a situation where it's an astronomical situation, too great for the people to deal with. It's a situation where you got a bunch of mechanical pigs with .357 Magnums and shotguns and mechanical.
I would not call the events of the 7th a sloppy attack. I would call blowing up a bathroom every few months a sloppy attack.
Mace and all that type of thing. And then they're talking about they're going to carry on the revolutionary.
But again, how many of those troops are dead? How many of their own people are dead because they just make sloppy attacks? I mean, it's a war. It's a war that's been going on for almost a century. People are going to die in a war. I know that sounds callous and cruel, but that's what's going to happen. But in a guerrilla war, it's not just about how many people you lose, because the enemy places a high value on the lives of their precious little hostages and their precious little spoiled IDF soldiers who have time to go out and get manicures and pedicures and moisturize as they're invading Gaza and murdering little kids and old women. So it's basically a matter of wearing down and grinding down the enemy, which the Palestinian resistance is very good at. Again, they've been doing this for decades.
Struggle, that's not revolution, it's insanity, it's madness, it's nostalgia, and it's a massacre. That's what it's potential massacre, that's what it is. And we don't support that because we've said all power to the people. All the power is manifested in the people. We don't have any people whose lives we believe that should be thrown away.
Has the Weatherman SDS tried to get you to go on their side? Have you met with them, and what happened?
We met with the Weatherman faction of SDS several times. We've had ideological struggles and we have ideological differences. So what we did was we had the other faction of SDS that agreed with the Black Panther Party called for an alternate action, a well-disciplined action not to provoke pigs, an action not to talk about setting up confrontations with the pigs, because the people are not ready for confrontation. These confrontations that they have are premature.
Note that Chairman Fred is not saying that he is opposed to confrontations with the pigs. I mean, the guy allegedly, again, this is what the pigs say, took an ice cream truck and handed out free ice cream to kids. And he also handcuffed a pig to a fire hydrant. So he's not opposed to confrontation. He's opposed to stupid, fruitless confrontation that would end up with the arrests and possible deaths of black people after all these rich white kids had gone underground or had went home.
They're politically premature, and they're wrong because they commit people in a situation which they're not anywhere prepared for.
Well, why do you think the Weatherman SDS tried to link the Black Panther Party to its movement?
I don't know if it was actually the Weathermen of SDS. I'd have to say that it was the establishment press that is nothing but a tool of Warden Nixon's machine. We call him Warden Nixon because the whole world is a penitentiary, and he's just a warden of the whole world. And you see, these people are just an arm that he uses for fascist oppression, And I think today, these fascist news media might have did that.
Now, briefly, how would you sum up what the Weatherman SDS is trying to do and what you think of what they're trying to do?
I'd say that basically they believe that white people need to learn how to struggle. That they believe that these white workers need to learn how to struggle through confrontations. I'd have to say that basically I believe that this is incorrect. I believe that white workers have been struggling. They're some of the most violent people in the world. I believe that what they need is they need a redirection in their ideology and in their politics. They need to know who to struggle against. The workers need to start to begin to learn that their job is to struggle against the bosses. And until they do this, then struggle is incorrect. It's like no struggle at all. We say that if you don't struggle correctly, you shouldn't struggle. But you should struggle. We said dare to struggle and you dare to win, dare not to struggle, and you don't deserve to win. But we have to struggle properly.
What about the special approach of Weatherman, which seems to be violence?
Well, you see, I don't think it's really violence, you know what I mean? I think it's just a lot of folly, a lot of child's play. I think that to have violence, you've got to be able to cope with violence, you know what I mean? And that's what the Black Panther, see, the Black Panther Party, a lot of people say we're violent. We're a self-defense organization that believes that the people should be educated what's going on.
This is a discussion about the Weather Underground, not a discussion about Hamas. Jesus Christ.
We do defend our offices and we do defend our homes. This is a constitutional right. Everybody has. There's nothing funny about that. The only reason they get mad at the Black Panther Party when they do it is for the simple reason that we're political. And they don't want to admit this. There are a lot of young organizations around, but we're a political organization. We're an organization that understands that politics is nothing but war without bloodshed, and war is nothing but politics with bloodshed. That it's just like you stretch something, and it goes, you can stretch things, they'll go into being another thing. If you stretch politics so long, it'll be war. And that's where we're at.
Well, then why do you feel it's so important for the Black Panther Party to disavow any real link with the Weatherman SDS?
I think it's important because there are a lot of people that watch the Black Panther Party for examples. They observe us and participate with us. And if we can be connected up with this, then it would be very unadvantageous to the people and very unadvantageous to the struggle, in that people that claim to be revolutionary would be going down roads that they think might be revolution, but in fact they're not roads of revolution. They'll be going east when their intentions are going west. And also it's important because the chairman Bobby Seale is in town, and he's being tried by this fascist judge Adolf Hitler Hoffman, you know, and he's being tried without a lawyer. And we've got to bring all of the attention and focus on this trial that we possibly can, so that people can understand that these people are more capable of building gas chambers than Hitler ever was capable of building gas chambers. And we're going to have to get together. We're going to have some anti-gas chamber marches, and some anti-fascism marches, and some anti-Hitler Hoffman marches, and some anti-Mussolini.
Fred Hampton confirmed as CEO of Antifa.
Attorney General Mitchell marches, and some anti-Daley and some anti-Hammerhead marches. These are the things we're going to have to do. The people need to be educated. If they're educated, we can resist and we can stop this fascism.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Oh, yeah. Chairman Fred Hampton eloquently, like, really, I could stop the stream right there, because Fred Hampton eloquently undermined the political roots of Weatherman. So, this was written by Shinya Ono, a Japanese member of the Weather Underground organization. So, he starts out by saying that 3 key points divide the Weathermen from all political tendencies. First, the primacy of confronting national chauvinism and racism among the working class whites. The necessity to turn every issue, problem, and struggle into an anti-imperialist, anti-racist struggle. The assertion that organizing whites are primarily around their own perceived oppression, whether it be women's liberation, student power, the draft and the stockades, the crisis in the cities, oppression at the point of production, aka capitalist exploitation, is bound to lead in a racist and chauvinist direction. So already they're fucking up, because, like, nobody back then or now is talking about let's solely organize white people at the point of production, okay? Like, intersectionality is a thing. Every communist worth their salt knows that building a multinational, multiracial workers movement is what we should be doing. That's what REM 2 was about. That's why Fred Hampton and the Black Panther Party oriented primarily towards and agreed more with REM 2 than they did REM 1, because REM 1 was basically proto-third worldism. They thought that there wasn't a white working class in the United States. So, yeah, they're already fucking up. Like you're basically implying that organizing workers, all workers, including white workers, who then as now were a majority of the working class, like Maoism is about organizing the masses. If you don't organize the masses, you are no Maoist, you are no communist, you are no revolutionary. So, yeah, they fucked that up. Second, the urgency of preparing for militant armed struggle now. And this is hilarious because Weather Underground never actually killed anybody but themselves. Like they, I'll get to this later, but like the Greenwich Village townhouse bombing, like those were the only fatalities attributable to the Weather Underground. So militant armed struggle, like in armed struggle, you kill people. They didn't kill anybody. They had a faction that was trying to, I think they tried to blow up an officer's dance at Fort Dix, but that was roundly criticized. They wanted to make nail bombs. So the necessity of organizing people into a fighting movement, not primarily by critiques, ideas, analyses, or programs. So you're basically rejecting the need for line struggle and you're rejecting the need for theory. And you just want to organize solely around catharsis, solely around this baseless, ridiculous, what were basically spicy acts of vandalism. Though these are all important by actually inflicting material damage to imperialist and racist institutions right now with whatever forces you've got. Third, the necessity of building revolutionary collectives that demand total, wholehearted commitment of the individual to struggle against everything that interferes with the revolutionary struggle and to struggle to transform oneself into a revolutionary and a communist. Collectives through which we can forge ourselves into effective tools of necessity and through which we can realize concretely in our day-to-day lives such well-known Maoist principles as politics and command, everything for the revolution, criticism, self-criticism, transformation. One weird thing that the Weather Underground did was they really, really hated monogamy. They saw it as a hangover from bourgeois and feudal society. So they waged a smash monogamy campaign, which was not consensual at all. Like they would literally order you to fuck somebody. They would break you up with your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your non-binary partner, and they would make you sleep with somebody else. And this went about as well as you would expect. There were also collective orgies, and they all ended up catching STDs, which they called weather creds. So, yeah, they're just lucky that HIV and AIDS didn't exist at this time. Well, it did, but it wasn't an epidemic. It didn't become an epidemic until the early 80s. But, yeah, not very fun. It was also very strange. I wonder if Fred Hampton would have thought about that if he knew about it. So, going back to my Don't Wake the Weatherman article. So when I was talking about these groups, like the Red Guards, which I talked about last night while playing Age of Empires 3 and listening to the Cosmopod, I said that what these groups were doing is akin to the Progressive Labor Parties, the PLP. That was basically the only point of unity that RIM 1 and RIM 2 had. PLP had to go, so they got together and they kicked them out. They denounced the Vietnamese as sellouts because they sat down to the Paris peace talks. Ultraleftism, manifest by obsession with violence regardless of the consequences. Weather eventually denounced their militarist error after 3 cadres were lost in the 1970 explosion because they didn't know how to build bombs. So they're talking about armed struggle and guerrilla action and all this heavy shit, but they didn't even know what the fuck they were doing. Sectarianism. Weather once wrecked the peace rally by storming the stage, denouncing the organizers as liberals, and ordering everyone to go commit revolutionary violence. This was cited by Rudd as eventually turning hundreds of people off the peace movement, because if you never went to a peace rally before and you ran into these bozos, you thought like, wow, I'm going to be in a whole fucking conglomeration of bozos, and I don't want to be affiliated with these imbeciles. So, yeah. And they also neglected the painstaking and often very tedious work of building a mass base. That is a manifestation of petty bourgeois accelerationism. The belief that people have to be caught up in a wave of self-destructive violence, abuse, and paranoia to be real cadre. Weather's internal affairs were no better. Rudd wrote, "We were by now a classic cult, true believers surrounded by a hostile world that we rejected and that rejected us in turn. We had a holy faith, revolution, which could not be shaken, as well as a strategy to get there, the Foucault theory. Our logic was self-fulfilling. The failure of the national action proved that we could rely only on ourselves. The more people left because they were fed up and unable to continue under the brutal and hierarchical collective system, the more our resolve was strengthened. The fact that few or no Students for Democratic Society chapters supported us proved the truth of our line that students were middle class and couldn't be trusted. Speak for yourself. With the exception only of ourselves, and even we were suspect. The rest of the movement hated us, which only confirmed the righteousness of our past. So they had a self-fulfilling prophecy. They thought that they were the only real revolutionaries because everybody else hated them. That is very akin to the Gonzaloites of the late 2010s. I even say this bears creepy similarity to the "we didn't become Maoists to be popular" line. That was one of Comrade Dallas's many sharp and correct insights into the state of the struggle in the United States. Yes, that was heavy with sarcasm. I don't think Comrade Dallas was ever correct on anything. The tactic of self-isolation, not listening to anybody that we don't like, is cultish. Does Mao not teach us that anybody may offer criticism and it is our job to attack not the speaker but be warned by his words? To link up and unite with only the people that are willing to submit to your line, either out of personal considerations or their own low political level, is not a correct Maoist understanding of the principle of criticism, self-criticism. Militancy is only one aspect of the determination of one's competency as a cadre. The test of a good cadre is knowing when it's time to be militant and how much militancy you can get away with and how much militancy the masses are getting away, or the masses are ready for. As Chairman Fred Hampton, who is a model example of a cadre, said, the ability to demonstrate the correctness of our militant line through practice is much more important. It is not enough for a small circle to be militant. We must step by step demonstrate the need for militancy by involvement in all aspects of the mass movement and demonstrating the correctness of our line and our positions through uniting the advanced for sharp struggle. If you cannot do this, you are not a Maoist and you are not a revolutionary and you are no cadre. A cadre is a seed that, when planted and nurtured, is able to inspire tens, hundreds, and millions of people. A cadre can take advantage of all opportunities that present themselves, turning a good thing into a bad thing, getting involved in all aspects of things. So, just how degenerate did this organization get? Here's an example of a conversation. The pigs are murdering them, one of my friends exclaimed. Now everyone will see how righteous the Symbionese Liberation Army is. The Symbionese Liberation Army was considered by many people at the time to be a fucking CIA astroturfed organization to make the revolutionary movement look like shit. They're burning them alive. I don't think so. This is just a Cops and Robbers TV show where the bad guys die in the end and the cops win in the end. Can't you see that revolutionary martyrs? I don't think they're anything more than self-deluded. Most normal people see them as criminals. You're totally right-wing. So yeah, these people jumped the shark long before the fucking 70s. Like, because they had a fundamentally petty bourgeois conception of what armed struggle and what revolution is. Just like the Symbionese Liberation Army. So, the days of rage that Chairman Fred criticized. This was their opening statement. Like, this was issued June 18th, 1969 during the SDS conference, the last SDS conference, because afterwards SDS fell apart. There was no more SDS. Weather actually ended up like being the legal heirs of SDS, but I think they ended up just closing. I think they ended up closing the office and donating all the papers of SDS to the University of Wisconsin. So really big Lindau fans. This was before he was thoroughly denounced and repudiated. If you were in China in 1971, you probably weren't a big Lindau fan. Yeah, a lot of dense theological stuff. Dense theoretical. Well, I guess you can call it theological because they saw revolutionary theory as theology. They didn't see it as something to be applied. So what was their goal? The goal is the destruction of U.S. imperialism and the achievement of a classless world communism. Winning state power in the U.S. will occur as a result of the military forces of the U.S. overextending themselves around the world and being defeated piecemeal. Struggle within the U.S. will be a vital part of this process, but when the revolution triumphs in the U.S., it will have been made by the people of the whole world. For socialism to be defined in national terms within so extreme and historical and oppressive nation as this is only imperialist national chauvinism on the part of the movement. Okay, what the fuck ever. That's why nobody liked them, because they couldn't fucking talk straight. So, the days of rage. Basically, they went around and they trashed Chicago. It's a dope picture, though. But they went around and they trashed Chicago during the autumn of '69. So, I mentioned this earlier. The army that fucks together fights together. The smash monogamy program of 1969. After an afternoon of bombing government buildings, members of the notorious radical leftist group would then go home, drop acid, party, and have sex. Gonzaloites are opposed to all four of those things. Well, I guess they're in support of going home because they never leave their houses. Anyways, so these orgies weren't just to boost morale. They were designed to emphasize collectivism while deprioritizing individual identity. So they wanted to turn everybody into this type of weird sex Borg. So, the Days of Rage, a Weatherman group of around 200 stormed affluent Chicago neighborhoods, throwing bricks through windows and rushing police brigades. 68 weathermen and women were arrested. I have a book here. They talk about this. Bring the War Home by Jeremy Veron. So, what did they hope? What did they hope would happen? Like, what did they hope would come out of this? They hoped that, first of all, that black people would join them. That didn't happen because black people have enough common sense to know that running around the Gold Coast of Chicago, throwing bricks through things, is not very smart. So, Veron talks about Debrayism, aka Foucaultismo, and how Weatherman found an alternative to the base building approach of much of the American left, as well as a rationale for engaging immediately in violence. According to Jeff Jones, the Weatherman concluded from Debray that a small group of very politically advanced, Weatherman was not politically advanced, ideologically committed. They were not ideologically committed because after they blew themselves up, they ended up punking out, and the Panther 21 criticized them for that. And could carry out revolutionary actions that will serve as an inspiration for other people. Blowing up a bathroom is not very inspirational. It's about as inspirational as blowing up a fucking swing set. See what I did there? Debray's violence, in short, was exemplary violence, did not have to produce tactical victories to be successful. The Weathermen did not, therefore, need be deterred by their numbers, which were tiny, and military experience. So, yeah. Not very smart. Their action didn't go very well. A bunch of people ended up arrested, and a bunch of people ended up having to go underground. In Detroit, the Weather Underground commanded every member to break up with his or her romantic partner. Eventually known as Smash Monogamy, the program scheduled mass orgies. They had these things scheduled, like, okay, I gotta fuck everybody on Friday, with the intent of making the relationship with the group the only one that mattered. After an orgy in Columbus, Ohio, member Gary Long recalled, within minutes, there was a whole group of naked people looking down from the head of stairs, saying, "Come on up." I took the hand of this girl and exchanged a few pleasantries to give it a slightly personal quality, and then we fucked. And there were people fucking and thrashing around all over. I know it smelled crazy in there. They sort of roll over on you, and sometimes you found yourself spread over more than one person. The room was like a modern sculpture. There'd be all these humps in a row. You'd see a knee and a buttocks, and then 3 knees and 4 buttocks. They were all moving up and down, rolling around. Along with drugs, the Weather Underground encouraged sexual experimentation with both genders. There's more than 2 genders, but whatever. Leader Bill Ayers called his group an army of lovers and himself had sex with his best friend. All right, comrades, the group orgy starts in 5 minutes. If you don't participate, you're going to have to drop LSD and go through a struggle session. So, weather crud. After several months, the orgies were stopped. Weatherman Mark Rudd claimed they complicated the group's mission with jealous distractions. In truth, the rampant spread of STDs was the nail in the coffin. Dozens of people suffered from gonorrhea, pelvic inflammatory disease, and crabs. They called it weather crud. Comrade, do you bear the weather crud? Are you a real revolutionary? So, Fall Offensive launched on October 6, 1970, a year after they destroyed SDS.
From the underground, that radical left-wing group, the Weathermen, has claimed responsibility for yesterday's dynamiting of a statue of a Chicago policeman. The group promises more attacks on the establishment around the entire country starting next week. The medium for this message was a tape recording, reputedly by the fugitive Weatherman leader, Bernadine Dorn. It came by mail this morning in New York to the Youth International Party, the Yippies, who invited newsmen to hear it. And our Ben Silver...
The fact that they took the Yippies seriously and considered them comrades in struggle shows just about how serious these folks were.
...was there as the tape was played.
Sisters and brothers, a year ago we blew away the Haymarket Pig statue at the start of the youth riot in Chicago. The head of the Police Sergeants Association called emotionally for all-out war between the pigs and us. We accepted. Last night we destroyed the pig again. This time it begins a fall offensive of youth resistance that will spread from Santa Barbara to Boston, back to Kent and Kansas. Now we are everywhere, and next week families and tribes will attack the enemy around the country. We are not just attacking targets. We are bringing a pitiful, helpless giant to its knees. We invite...
No, you're not. Like, eventually the FBI started considering these people a joke.
Key and Nixon and Agnew to travel in this country. Come to the high schools and campuses. But guard your planes, guard your colleges, guard your banks, guard your children, guard your doors.
Can you verify that the voice is that of Bernadine Dorn?
Yes, I'm her sister, and I'll verify that it's her voice.
What is your first name, please?
Jennifer.
Are you going to turn this information over to the police?
Well, I assume they already have it since we've used our phones here. I mean, it's open knowledge. This is their statement.
How do you feel about what your sister is advocating?
I think it's right on. I think she's far out, and all Weathermen are far out.
Could you explain that?
There are brothers and sisters in the underground.
Sorry about that. So after the Days of Rage debacle, the Weather Underground, along with like a few other people, I think Bob Avakian was there. I think Mike Klonsky was there. I think a bunch of people that were like from Rem 2 were there, but they were like, these people are fucking nuts. But let's just go see what's happening. Like, it was basically going to go watch a house fire. But I think Bernadine Dorn, because this was right after the Charles Manson killings. The Manson people, the family, murdered Sharon Tate and stuck a fork in her stomach. And they were like, I think Bernadine Dorn and like a couple other people were walking around with their hands like this, signifying the fork that was shoved into Sharon Tate's belly. So, yeah, these people are fucking nuts. So, they conducted, at this war council, rudimentary military training. So, you know that you're going to try to fight the heaviest imperialists to ever exist in the face of this planet, and you conduct rudimentary military training, and you pass out copies of Marighell's Manual of the Urban Guerrilla, which was written for an entirely different context. So the first major change was to dissolve SDS because there was really no need for SDS. So they wanted to dissolve SDS to distance the group from the nonviolent protest history of the past, as well as the focus on labor rights. So SDS disbanded, and later the national headquarters was closed down, and all of its papers were donated to the University of Wisconsin, if I recall correctly. The second and more prominent decision of the War Council was the Weathermen's decision to take up arms, go underground, and begin a militant guerrilla war against American imperialism, in an effort to promote direct action following the writing of Carlos Marighella and creating a formation based on Che Guevara's revolutionary FOCO method. The Weather Underground organized the creation of hidden cells throughout the nation. And funny thing was, like, after the top leaders ended up getting arrested or like disappearing, a lot of these cells like didn't know what the fuck was going on, so they eventually came in from the cold of like the 80s and early 90s. Like, you had some people who were just like living in the middle of nowhere, and they ended up just creating whole ass families. So like, well, I haven't heard from Bernadine in a while. Guess I'll just do my thing. So yeah, they got regular ass jobs and they raised regular ass families, but they were there just because of the fucking Weathermen. It's wild. So they blew themselves up. It sucked, but that's what happens when you play with explosives and you don't know what you're doing. So they released this statement called New Morning Changing Weather in the wake of a New York townhouse explosion that I think it belonged to one of the members' stepdads or something. This came after they helped break Timothy Leary out of prison. Timothy Leary ended up running off to Algeria, getting held hostage by Eldridge Cleaver, and then going to Afghanistan, where he became a snitch and he told on everybody. People were mad because because the Weather Underground helped a white countercultural figure rather than an imprisoned black radical, and they considered this basically white people being flunkies. The New York Panthers were critical of the communique's support of drug use, so I guess the Weather Underground decided that orgies and stuff weren't enough. They also had to promote everybody dropping acid and smoking weed all the time, because as everybody knows, psychedelic drugs and explosives mix very well. So, what did they say? The deaths of 3 friends ended our military conception of what we were doing. It took us weeks of careful talking to rediscover our roots and remember that we had been turned on to the possibilities of revolution by denying the schools, the jobs, the death relationships we were educated for. Imagine going to Columbia or Harvard or Yale or Stanford, joining this dopey ass political organization, like just casting all your shit away. I don't need a job. I'm going to have orgies and take marijuana and LSD and do nothing with my fucking life. Unprogramming ourselves, relearning American history. Just say you like getting fucking high. The first demonstration when we joined, the first time we tried to convince our friends, in the wake of the townhouse, we found out we didn't know much about each other's pasts, our talents, our interests, and our differences. Wild. So, yeah, they were ideologically all over the place. And the Panther 21 did not like this very much. They were like, what the fuck are y'all doing? Like, we're sitting in jail and y'all are playing because your buddies got blown up. I mean, it's a fucking war. What did you expect? So they say, we wish to make it known to you that we feel an unrighteous act that's been done to you by the self-proclaimed vanguard parties by their obvious neglect in not openly supporting you, by their obvious disregard of and silence on your righteous revolutionary actions. I think Fred Hampton would disagree with them characterizing these stupidities as righteous revolutionary actions, but I digress. This letter is also a response to your latest communique, New Morning, Changing Weather, a part of which I just read. In it, we can sense and feel your frustration and sense of isolation. We know the feeling very well, having felt it ourselves for the last 21 months. So they go on to talk about the loss of direction, the confusion and chaos, because like, okay, yeah, a bunch of your friends just died. We can see your attitude towards the mother country youth culture, how it was the forces which produced you, a culture that you were part of, a young and unformed society, a nation. What? And they go on to, I think this is correct. This is probably the most correct part of this piece. We, you especially under the circumstances, must realize that grass and organic consciousness expanding drugs are not weapons of the revolution. They may be a tool to bring you together in a sense of community, but they will not bring the American system down. Remember, the amount of hard drugs increased proportionately with the growing political awareness in the black community. Keep in mind, this was before crack even was known about. And that was no accident. And the establishment uses its tools, not only the killer drugs such as smack and speed, to pacify and destroy young people, but also dangerously adulterated organic consciousness expanding drugs. Also, these tools can also be used for escapism, which is exactly what Weather Underground wanted to use them for. And again, to quote Sartre, in other words, the colonized people protect themselves against colonial estrangement by going one better in religious estrangement and wine and dope and organizations and petitions and congresses. Thus, then in your youth communities of the mother country, the emphasis is on individual freedom still, while we are dealing with group freedom still, because the Weather Underground was fundamentally an organization comprised of individualists. Only an individualist would think that blowing up a bathroom at a police station is providing material support to the National Liberation Front. Where do blacks and the rest of the third world fit into the scheme of things in your new families? You see, you state that none of these changes that people are going through are rules and principles. Now, in dealing with the mother country, black and third world relationships, in dealing with revolution, in dealing with the need for new men and new women, you are dealing with principles, or are you trying to tell us that these contradictions have been dealt with? We are not convinced. And it goes on to lay into them. But the the gist of this statement is that, like, you need to keep up the fucking Keep up the fucking revolutionary struggle. Don't pug out. Because a lot of people saw the Weather Underground. Keep in mind, these people came onto the scene talking all hard and shit. But they're saying we must fight with gun, bomb, mind, and heart. We must match the enemy at least blow for blow. At least. You see, for us, things are critical every day, every hour. How many of our people are suffering? How many die? That's why our fight will never be over until no human being in Washington, D.C. is more important than any human being in Harlem. No human being on Wall Street is more important than any human being in Guatemala, and so on and so forth. We don't accept the pig's boundaries. The Black, Puerto Rican, Chicano, and Red Man's revolution is the heart and core of the revolution in the American North. You must also spread the light of your knowledge and encourage more of your youth community to fight. So basically, the Panther 21 are calling them punks. Do I consider them punks? I mean, yeah, you just come on talking all this violent shit, and then some of your friends die, and you punk out. They put this out, Prairie Fire. Probably I guess you could call it the most politically advanced statement. This was released in '74. Probably the most politically advanced statement that they ever released, because it was after a period of self-criticism and ideological development. But they still talk about the banner of Che. Why is revolution necessary in the early stages? The '60s, achievements, turning point, self-criticism. Like, if they had been more self-critical while they were doing all this stupid shit, yeah, they probably would have accomplished a lot more. And they were ideologically eclectic. Like, you see them quoting Fidel, and then Mao, and then Che, and then all these different sorts of people. This wouldn't fly today because most Maoists think Fidel Castro was a disgusting revisionist. I am not one of the Maoists that thinks Fidel Castro was a disgusting revisionist. I think he was a revisionist, but I think he was kind of between a rock and a hard place. Namely, that being two superpowers that considered Cuba extremely important. So they start off by saying armed struggle is coming to being in the United States. It is an indication of growth that our movement has developed clandestine organizations and that we are learning to fight. Development of guerrilla organization and armed activity against the state is most advanced in the black community, where the tradition and necessity for resistance is highest. Oh, thank you for giving us our props. The crises of the society provide the training grounds for third world people in condition of prison. The army, the streets, and most oppressive jobs produce warriors, political theorists, and active strategists. The Black Liberation Army, fighting for 3 years under ruthless attack by the state, and the fighters in prisons, and recently the Symbionese Liberation Army. What is their obsession with the Symbionese Liberation Army? Like, all you have to do is read these people's statements and, like, look at the shit they did. Like murdering a black superintendent, a very popular black superintendent, with cyanide-laced bullets, and robbing a sporting goods store and then getting caught because you try to shoplift socks, and then you shoot up the store when you get grabbed. Like, that's not advanced. If that's your definition of advanced, the Black Liberation Army, they went hard. Because they actually studied and knew what they were doing, because it wasn't like LARPing for these people. It was actually a matter of life and death, because black people always get the brunt of shit. Like, we can't just afford to run around and play with guns and stuff like that, because we're seen as an actual threat. White people are not. They're seen, they're just kids. Let them let them do what they want. But, like, look at these actions. Like, look at what they do. They blew up the ROTC building. They closed the National Office of SDS. They firebombed the office of Judge Murtaugh, which was presiding over the Panther 21 trial. Okay, that was kind of based. Theodore Gold, Diana Aunton, and Terry Roberts are killed in the Greenwich Village townhouse explosion. They were making a nail bomb to place at a non-commissioned officer's dance at Fort Dix. Chicago police discover a Weather Underground bomb factory on Chicago's north side. Based on a tip, Chicago police find 59 sticks of dynamite, ammunition, and nitroglycerin in an apartment traced to Weather Underground organization members. So after the police basically found all their weapons, their activity was ended. Oh yeah, during this time, like, you could literally go into the hardware store and buy dynamite. People used to take out tree stumps and stuff. They bombed New York City Police headquarters. They helped Timothy Leary escape from a low-security prison. They bombed the Bank of America. They bombed the United States Army base at the Presidio in San Francisco on the 11th anniversary of the Cuban Revolution. They bombed the Capitol. to protest the invasion of Laos. Like, people don't understand, like, in the 70s, we didn't have all this, like, security shit. Like, you literally get on a plane with a gun or a bomb. That's how so many planes ended up being hijacked. But now, you couldn't do none of this shit. You would be under the prison or just shot to death. So, I mean, some of their actions made political sense, but a lot of them didn't. And then, the last hurrah, so to speak, was the Brinks robbery in 1981. You had Kathy Bowden, Sam Brown, Judy Clark, and David Gilbert. The former district attorney of San Francisco, Chesa Bowden, I believe, is David Gilbert and Kathy Bowden's son. So yeah, you literally have a Weather Underground red diaper baby who was the district attorney of San Francisco for a bit. And some hang-around members of the Black Liberation Army. They called themselves the May 19th Communist Organization. They stole over $1.6 million from a Brinks armored car at the Nanuet Mall near Nyack, New York. They were stopped by police and engaged them in a shootout. They killed two police officers and one Brinks guard, as well as wounding several others. So they didn't get away with the money. But that was the last hurrah of the Weather Underground. The rest of these people, they ended up becoming, I think Rudd is a fucking, Mark Rudd, I'm sorry, is a math professor or something. And the rest of these people, like, they have just average, ordinary, everyday, upper middle class lives. And they're paraded around and around as like the last of the revolutionary Mohicans. But like, they didn't really do shit back then. Like, listen to Fred Hampton about these people. Like, they were able to go back and integrate into white middle class society because these people were fundamentally white middle class people LARPing as revolutionaries. So, as somebody at the SDS conference, the last SDS conference, said in 1969, shortly before his organization collapsed, you don't need a rectal thermometer to know where the assholes are. Don't wake the weatherman. If you actually consider putting a bomb in somebody's toilet, I highly recommend you seek some professional psychological counseling before you fuck yourself up and before you fuck the entire movement up. Read. Go to protests. Study. Organize. Leave toilets alone. They didn't do anything to anybody.